He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It's Sunday night. And Frank, I am still shook. I am still sitting here thinking about the moment at the end of the game where you felt killer instinct, where Josh Allen said, it's 4th down and I'm going to get this. I am going to score. Where Josh Allen absolutely trucks people on the way, and where Josh Allen gets himself into the end zone, throws the ball down, flexes in this way, and you just felt it, man. I know it was only a regular season game, Frank, and we usually shoot the shot coming in, but I'm still so worked up over the fact that we saw Buffalo go in and just manhandle the moment in a way that has me finally feeling like they are built to be able to take down the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Great game, fun game, a very interesting way for the Chiefs to lose their unbeaten streak. Because, I mean, if you think about the Chiefs and all the ways they won these games, they're sitting there 9-0, feeling pretty good. You lose one game, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, the Bills are a game behind us now in the standings, a loss in the loss column, and they have the tiebreaker and probably an easier schedule the rest of the way. So this game, that play specifically, might change the entire AFC playoff picture. We could look back at that game in January and say this is why the Bills have the bye and the number 1 seed, and the Kansas City's probably going to go there and beat them in the playoffs anyway, because that's what they do. But this was a kind of earth-shaking moment for the AFC in the playoff picture. All the other teams in the AFC now see the Chiefs' vulnerabilities. It gives them a chance, at least in their minds, to maybe knock them off, which they couldn't do last year. I thought, not just the play itself by Josh Allen, but let's go back a step. I thought they were going to kick a field goal. I really did. I thought that, I understood going for it, but I was like, okay, you're going to take the points here, make them drive the whole length of the field, score a touchdown. You don't want to just give them a shot at the field goal. But I think if you go back to what I've harped upon from 2 weeks ago when Todd Bowles didn't go for 2, Sean McDermott had the mentality of, we have to slay the dragon right now. It's now or never. We are not going to just kick a field goal and say, here's the ball, Patrick Mahomes, go and beat us with a touchdown. Because you know what? He probably would have. He's Patrick Mahomes. The Bills went for it in that situation, which I thought was very bold. And looking back, probably the right call. I understand it completely. And then Josh Allen just makes the superhero play. Like, it was fantastic to watch him do that. And it just makes things more interesting. Instead of the Bills being basically 3 games behind the Chiefs and not having a tiebreaker, all of a sudden the Bills are right there on their tails. The Pittsburgh is too. We're going to talk about them. It opens up the AFC a lot. Whereas you just keep thinking like, oh, the Chiefs are inevitable. This is just going to happen. Now all of a sudden we've seen them lose. Didn't look particularly great in this game. And I don't think they've looked particularly great all season. They keep winning games, and great for them, and that's the name of the game. But we knew that they were beatable. This wasn't one of those, are the 2007 Patriots ever going to lose type of teams. This was like, yeah, they're going to lose sometime. It's probably going to be at Buffalo because they're a really tough team. But I think it gives the Bills some confidence. It gives them some momentum. But now they got to go take it. The Bills can't, look, they've had, seasons in the past where they have games. I remember, losing to Urban Meyer Jaguars and stuff, where you're just like, boy, if you could just have that game back, you would have been such better shape come playoff time. The Bills have to go take it now. I'm not saying they got to win out and go 15-2 to get the number 1 seed, but maybe. Like, you don't want to let this opportunity slip. You have a real chance to get the 1 seed, be 2 home games away from a Super Bowl if you're Buffalo. That's what this game meant. I thought this changes the entire scope of the NFL season. That 1 4th down run from Josh Allen, it was thrilling. It was awesome. It was just a really, really fun game.
Look, I'll admit, I'm an idiot. I didn't think they should go for it. I looked at it and said, look, I understand.
I didn't either, honestly. I was sitting there like, I don't know. But then I get it. Like, you look back, right? And you say, yeah, that's what you got to do to beat the Chiefs. You got to land a knockout blow. You can't just expect to go to the judges' scorecard, right? You got to knock them out.
I feel that, but also I felt like I was kind of prepping our lead coming into the show, and I was like, well, we'll be talking about how stupid it is to not take points against Patrick Mahomes. Like, you're letting him beat you with the field goal instead of making him drive down the field. But I think to me, it wasn't just that, and yes, you're right. Sean McDermott made it clear that they needed to slay the dragon. It was also, and this is so easy to say and rare to do, the Dragon Slayer was clear. It had to be Josh Allen. And they did what you're supposed to do in these situations every time. You put the ball in your best player's hands. And, we're going to talk about Pittsburgh, but let's be honest. With the 2-point conversion on the line, they put the ball in Lamar's hands and there was nowhere to go. In this situation, they put the ball in Josh Allen's hands in the way that let him drop back and then in the way that let him make a real decision on what to do with it. And once he decided he wasn't going down, there wasn't a damn thing that Kansas City could do about it. And that's a great Kansas City defense that wasn't ready. They just didn't have a way to pull him down because, frankly, you saw who wanted it more. And when you see that version of the Dragon Slayer, man, that's why it feels different to me, because the Dragon Slayer was Josh Allen. And the Dragon Slayer, to me, definitely looks like that sort of guy that's like, now he's got that extra swagger. He's got that extra kick. He knows he can do what he had to do to beat this Kansas City team. I think this is huge. And look, we could sit here and say what Buffalo needs to do for the remainder of the season. For today, for right now, for tonight, when they go into Victory Monday, they clearly turned around and said, guess what? We are capable of being the Super Bowl champions. Like that. They made that statement.
And not only that, Fitz, I think you'll agree with me on this. I don't think this was the Bills' best game. I don't think I don't come out of this game going, well, wow, like Josh Allen threw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns and the defense, blah, blah, blah. I thought they played like a B minus type of game. Like I didn't think they were great in this game. And that almost gives me more confidence in the Bills that they have a gear beyond this. This wasn't like we just had a day, like a day we're never going to be able to replicate, and we knocked off the Chiefs. Now we're going to get into January and we can't replicate that. And Tyler Bass is going to miss wide right. We're going to lose. No, I feel like if they meet up again, and I think they will meet up again, I think we're going to get Chiefs Bills rematch in the playoffs somehow. I think when they meet up again, the Bills can play better than this. And that's got to give Buffalo a lot of confidence to say, look, we just beat Kansas City without playing like out of our minds, like we usually have to do to beat Kansas City. We just played a good, solid game, got a couple key plays when we needed them. The defense came up huge a couple times. Josh Allen, obviously, that big play. But I feel like the Bills were good, not great, and they still beat Kansas City. And so, like you said, that's big for them.
At some level, too, like it's like a reality show, surviving Mahomes. Like, because you just felt like so many times in the course of this game, Mahomes was running around. They finally commit to try and take him down. He flicks the ball. You feel like it's just going to turn into something big. You know, there were so many close moments in this where it felt like Kansas City was on the precipice of finding a way to win. I think we all sat there and said, well, the Chiefs are going to figure out a way to win this football game. And even on the broadcast, it was just making me vomit at one point when, you know, you're down by 9 with a minute to go and say, well, I'm not going to count this guy out. Like, okay, we all need this reminder over and over. Give us some analysis on why it was terrible. But I do think that there's an element of relief because I think the Bills looked a little tight at times in this game. I thought the Bills looked like they were a little, they know what's up against. They know their issues with the Chiefs. They understand all of this. I felt like that was the sigh of relief that happened at the end of this. And Frank, I don't even feel like if they played 10 times out of 10, I don't feel like I'd see a different result necessarily. Like the Bills are a better football team right now than Kansas City. And it took everything to find a way to beat Mahomes, but they are the better team won this game. The better team came out the victor, and the better team I think would win this game if they played again. This was a big statement for Buffalo in that sense.
That's very strong. I don't know that I'm quite there to say the Bills are clearly the better team. Look, the Chiefs.
Come with me. Come with me.
Look, the Chiefs were 9-0 for a reason. They're still the Chiefs. They play this game at Arrowhead. It goes a different way, right? Buffalo. But that's part of this equation too. Home field advantage is so huge for Buffalo. Not that they couldn't go to Arrowhead and win. We remember the 13 seconds game. They should have won that one. They kind of blew it. But to just be at home for that game, it didn't work out last January. I get that. But I think there's such a big difference that you want every advantage you can against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the playoffs. And getting home field advantage would be huge for them. And getting the extra week of rest and all this kind of stuff. And the Bills weren't going to do that if they lose today. So the question of who is the better team, who's the best team in the AFC, I still lean Chiefs, honestly. But I saw it today, it's way more of a coin flip than it was before today when you said, hey, the Bills can beat them. Again, they didn't play their best game. I don't think. Still won the game, and they can do it again in January. Doesn't mean they will. They haven't yet. Nobody can knock out Mahomes in January and Andy Reid and all them, right? But this gives you a little more hope that this AFC is going to be a lot more wide open than just, hey, the Chiefs are going to cruise to another AFC championship and another Super Bowl.
The Bills have the 49ers, Rams, teams they should beat, the Patriots twice, and the Jets. But they do have the Lions left. So obviously that would be a particularly tough game for them. They're one game behind the Chiefs. The Chiefs, if you're looking at it, are about to have just chef's kiss here. They got the Panthers, Raiders, Then they have the Chargers, good team, Browns, Texans, Steelers. So there are some tough games left ahead of Kansas City as well. We'll see how that plays out, but a huge statement. Speaking of huge statements, Detroit made a huge statement on scoring on all 7 of the drives that Goff, scoring touchdowns on all 7 of the drives, I believe, that Goff was in the game in this one. And they had the Jags, the worst loss in franchise history, 52-6. And dare I say, Frank, it didn't even look like it was that close. Like this was one of those examples of seeing where a team is on both ends of it. We just saw the best team in the NFL, and I think we saw the worst team in the NFL in the same game.
Yeah, probably. Giants might have something to say about that. But yeah, this looked like the rare NFL game that looked like one of those college mismatches where you're like, oh goodness, Purdue's playing Ohio State this week. They're going to get the doors blown off of them. And that's exactly how this game played out. By the way, do you hear that, Fitz? Do you hear that? It's Jared Goff's MVP candidacy coming back to life. We're back. A perfect passer rating for Jared Goff, who was awesome again in this game. He's really been awesome every game except a little blip week 2 against the Buccaneers. And obviously the 5 interception game was no prize. But other than that, he's had games where it's just like, it's target practice for him. It's just easy. Like this offense has so many easy buttons for him where it's just like, all right, here, let me get the ball out to Jameson Williams, who's just going to run past everybody. Amon-Ra Brown, St. Brown's going to be open all day, every day. Sam Laporta didn't even play in this game and had 2 tight ends score. Like it's ridiculous how good the Lions are when they're hitting on all cylinders. You can say, oh, the Jaguars stink, and I get that, but part of being a great team is beating the heck out of bad teams, and they do that. They really do. They didn't let off the gas either. I mean, they were passing it if there's like 5 minutes left of the game, they're still passing it on 3rd down. Like it was like, man, you guys have no chill whatsoever. You are just wanting to bury Doug Peterson here, and it was a statement. Look, if we needed a reminder who's the best team in the NFL right now, this was it. They look great. They have looked great almost all season, except the one weird loss against the Buccaneers. Yeah, this is the best team in football. Almost like I was talking about with the Bills. This is their shot. I've said this over and over and over again. You don't get this many opportunities. They are the best team in football. They have a clear path to the number 1 seed in the NFC and be 2 home wins away from going to a Super Bowl. We've all seen that raucous environment in Detroit. You're probably going to lose your coordinators after this season. You might lose some key players because of salary cap stuff. Maybe you suffer some injuries next year that you can't rebound from, like we're seeing with the 49ers. This is it for the Lions. You can't depend on this next year. This is your shot to go get the prize, go to that Super Bowl you've always wanted to get to. And it looks like they're focused on that, and they realize, hey, unlike last year's NFC Championship game, we're not letting this opportunity slip away. This is a focused team. They're a talented team. They're a well-coached team. They check every box you'd want to see out of a Super Bowl champion. This is a Super Bowl championship level team we're seeing in Detroit.
So the Jags are 2-9. They've lost 14 of their last 17 games.
Oh.
They gave up 653 yards in total offense. 644 yards in total offense to the Lions, and they gave up 412 yards to Jared Goff. If Doug Peterson doesn't get fired as they go into their bye week, then the Jags are just telling you they don't care. As an organization, they're telling you they have no pride. As an organization, they're telling you none of this matters. And as an organization, what they're really telling their fans is, we're screwed and we're going to be terrible. We don't care anymore. We don't pay attention. And if that's the case, that makes it really hard to be a Jags fan. The other side of it is Doug Peterson was supposed to be a franchise savior. So now what you have is yet again, you've got an organization that's going to have to go back to the well. They thought they were doing the right thing with Urban Meyer. That was very much the wrong thing. Then it looked for a second like maybe Doug Peterson was going to be okay. And now that looks like the wrong thing. If you're the Jags, you're looking around and saying, my God, of all of the openings, why does somebody want to go work there? Like, why are the Jags more appealing? And I'm not saying somebody wouldn't take the job. Somebody will take the job.
Yeah,
but if you're Ben Johnson and you have choices, you're Ben Johnson, you're one of the hot, you're Slowick, you're one of the hot coordinators that have choices. Why would you choose this team? I don't know that Trevor Lawrence is really the answer. I don't know that ownership is engaged in a way that makes you feel like you're going to get what you need to be successful. I don't know that the fan base really has any reason to be engaged. Hell, we don't even know if they want to play in Jacksonville instead of London, if we're being serious. We joke about this all the time, but the fact is the Jaguars top to bottom are a disaster. And at some point, ownership has to look at it and realize that culture is created top to bottom, which means the Jags culture is broken all the way from the Khan family all the way down to the water boy. Everybody in that building right now should be looking around and wondering if they're still going to have a job. And frankly, I think there are certain organizations that simply have to flush everything and start over completely. That's the Jags. They need to absolutely rip apart the way they do business and find a different way to do it. They need to sit down. They need to hire a new team president of operations. They need to get rid of Balky. They need a new GM. That new GM needs to turn around and hire a new coach that hires new everything. They need to rebuild this entire thing because right now the ship is sunk. It's not sinking. It is sunk. And they're the worst franchise in the NFL.
Yeah, you put it really well, all of that. I agree with many of your points. One thing that kind of sticks out to me is there was a report from NFL media on Saturday that basically said, if the Jaguars don't go win at Detroit, then Doug Peterson's getting fired, and maybe Trent Baalke too. First of all, that is one of the most unprofessional things you're ever going to see in the NFL. That is just, that's a circus right there. That you allow that to get leaked out, that, hey, before we play this game against Detroit tomorrow, the coach is going to get fired if he doesn't win. What? Like, what are we doing here, Jaguars? That's awful. Whoever leaked that is just, it's a telltale sign of a horrible organization. It just is. Like, however that was allowed to happen, like, no, that just can't. Like, don't do that. But then, okay, so you know this. Basically the ultimatum's there. If we don't win on Sunday, Doug Peterson's getting fired. And the players put out that effort? Really?
That's a good point.
Right?
That's a really good
point. They
knew,
hey, we're playing for our coach. If there was any life left in that team, and you lose 52-6, the worst loss in Jaguars history. And let's be fair, the Jaguars have had a lot of losses. This has been a bad franchise almost since they stepped into the NFL so many years ago. And that's their worst loss in franchise history. When you know that if we don't play hard, if we don't play well, if we don't win, our coach is going to get fired. Well, yeah, you lay an absolute egg. You're down 28-3 late in the second half. If Dan Campbell really had some vendetta against the Jaguars or something, the Lions could have scored 70. Like, it just seemed like so easy for them. There was no resistance from the Jaguars. It was an embarrassing effort from them. And, you kind of touched on, what does this opening look like? And I guess it's if you talk yourself into Trevor Lawrence. I wouldn't.
Maybe.
I don't think Trevor Lawrence is there as a franchise quarterback. He's good. I don't think he's terrible. He's not an anchor, but I don't also think he's this guy we thought he was going to be either. Now he's making $55 million a year. The rest of the roster is just whatever. And like you said, there's just no juice in that Jaguars organization right now. I assume, look, we're taping this Sunday night. I assume Doug Peterson's going to get fired because you don't leak out to NFL media that you're going to fire the coach if he loses. You lose 52-6 and then you keep your coach. Like that just be nonsensical. Like, what are we doing?
But I've already seen some reports where people are saying that Baalke could survive. Like, Baalke might not get fired and he could pick the next coach. And
I wonder where that's coming from, huh?
Yeah,
who might be the 100%. Source on that? I can't figure it out. But everybody needs to go. You're right. You said it, Fitz. Everything needs to change. You change the uniforms, change the helmets, change everything about that organization. They should do that anyway.
The helmets are ugly.
Yeah, they're really not great. They really, that whole teal thing really was so 90s. Just everything needs to change with the Jaguars. This is not a winning organization. It's bad from top down. The ownership, like you said, is really never been engaged with this thing. It is an absolute mess. And what you saw on the field today, the Lions were the Jaguars a few years ago, right? We would all laugh about the Lions and how terrible they are. They've never made a Super Bowl. The Lions built this thing up very quickly by instilling a different culture. Brad Holmes came in as their general manager, and he's excellent at what he does. And he got tough, hard-nosed players to come in and play for a coach who's tough and hard-nosed, who knows how to get through to his guys, to lead his guys, to motivate his guys. They found the right players for the right pieces, and now they're one of the model franchises in the NFL. As crazy as that sounds, was saying about the Detroit Lions, they changed everything. The Jaguars need to change everything. They had to look across the field and say, are we even playing the same sport? Like, are we even in the same league? Like, we should be relegated at the end of this. So the Jaguars have such a long way to go. One of the things they have to do is change coaches. And by the way, I wrote about this for winners and losers from the early games. What happened to Doug Peterson? I know we've kind of touched upon this, but 2017 Eagles, he put forth one of the best coaching performances we've seen in the past 10, 20 years. Like, they lost their MVP level quarterback late in the season. Carson Wentz was playing at that level. Nick Foles wins them a Super Bowl, only Super Bowl in Eagles history. I thought at that moment, watching Doug Peterson outcoach Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl, and he absolutely did that. Doug Peterson's going to be a top 5 coach in the NFL for the next 20 years. Like, this guy is revolutionizing things with being aggressive on fourth downs, and look what he's done with Nick Foles and even Wentz before him. And we're just 7 years later, and it's like, oh my God, this guy looked like the NFL has passed him by 6 times since then. It is crazy how fast and hard Doug Peterson fell after such a great start to his career. That Eagles Super Bowl second year he was a head coach. Since then, it's just been nothing for him. And now today was obviously rock bottom.
Safe to say, I would presume that on your power rankings, the Jags will be 32nd. And
Almost
the
have
Lions
to be
will
the
first.
Boy, the Giants stink. The Giants stink too. I have to think about that one, Fitz. There's some candidates. Let's put it that way. Yes, but no question about number one. No question. Lions keep increasing their lead to the point where if the Lions lost next week, I'd probably still have them number one. They're so far ahead of everybody right now. I don't even really think it's a debate.
I love all of that. So now what becomes interesting is what's going to happen to your power rankings based on one outcome today, where the Steelers take down the Ravens in everybody's going to call it hard mouth, like just a physical football game. Man, I honestly thought the Ravens offense looked really disjointed in this one. They got hit in the mouth and didn't really have a plan for it. I didn't love several of the plays in there. I thought the play calling was kind of weird. You had some drop balls that didn't really feel like they ever asserted their dominance. And then the other side of it is the Ravens defense sucks. And the Steelers didn't move it with any level of regularity there. So I think it's funny because at the time I was watching with a bunch of people that were really invested in that game, and there were fans from both sides, and they were talking about how great this game was. And I was watching and thinking, are we watching the same game? Like somebody had to win, but I thought both teams kind of looked ugly in this.
Yeah, it was not a pretty game. It was typical. I know you don't want to, go down that road. Typical Steelers-Ravens game where they're going to get down and dirty and really not always the prettiest of football, but it was an important one. And when you took your leave of absence wherever you went on Wednesday, I can't even remember anymore. But you weren't here, so you don't know this. I gave Jory a little bit of a hard time because we started talking. She mentioned like, oh yeah, the Steelers is a wild card team, and I was like, are we sure they're a wild card team? Because we just kind of keep dismissing the Steelers, and I'm guilty of this too, of just saying, well, of course the Ravens are better. Of course the Ravens are going to win this division, when it's right in front of our faces that this Steelers team doesn't have a weakness. They really don't. Like, I guess you can nitpick. They need a second receiver, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But they have a Hall of Fame coach who's on an absolute heater right now, who absolutely knows how to manage every single game to give his team the best chance to win. You have a quarterback who's having a revival. Now, Russell Wilson did not play well today. I'm not saying that. And he threw an awful interception in the fourth, like absolutely, positively awful interception in the fourth quarter that they had to overcome. But overall, Russell Wilson has turned this offense into something viable. And the defense is just awesome. Like TJ Watt's going to Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. So you look and you say, where's the Steelers' weakness? I know the Ravens' weakness. It's the worst pass defense in the NFL. That's theirs. Their offense, I don't want to say got exposed today, but it got slowed down. I think, we were giving Lamar Jackson the MVP. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but MVPs don't come from non-division winners. They better win the AFC North if he wants to win another MVP. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. At some point, we just have to say the Steelers are legit. Like, they're good. They're the best team in the AFC North, and why wouldn't they be? They have the one thing the Ravens don't, and that's defense. So I thought this was a really, really, I don't want to say impressive win. Anytime you beat the Ravens is a good win, for sure, but more important than impressive, because now just kind of, the way the standings go, you look and you start to say, well, the Ravens got to play pretty much perfect football throughout. That's what happens when you lose to the Browns, you lose to the Raiders. You give away games like that, all of a sudden you're in a little bit of a deep hole. If you have to pick a team right now to win this division, I think you got to pick the Steelers, don't you? Like, this is, and if you're power ranking teams, you got to put the Steelers ahead of the Ravens. There's nothing the Steelers haven't done this season to check any boxes that you want to see from a really, really good football team. They're legit, and they're not going anywhere.
My problem here is that, if we're being honest, myself included, we've been talking about the Ravens like they have the Steelers record, and they don't. The Steelers are exactly 8-2. Like, we're talking about the Ravens like they're the 8-2 team. They're not. They're 7-4. Yep. And like 7-4 is still, it's a good record. It's not a great record. And yet again, it just felt like they couldn't get on track. They got in their own way. I mean, we never see Derrick Henry turn the football over, right? Like, it's weird to see turnovers in general. There were things that just didn't go right. I hated the 2-point conversion call where it felt like every outlet that Lamar had went to the right, and then Lamar went to the left and left themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, when you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, as they were lining up, I kind of said, like, I don't know how you stop the Ravens in this situation. They have so many options, and then they kind of cut off all their options with the play call. Like, it's just Lamar, roll to your left to try to make something happen. Like, no, don't you have a better 2-point play than that? I thought it was also like, look, we're talking about, like, Tomlin being a great coach, being a smart guy, knowing how to manage a game. They line up for that 2-point conversion. the Ravens had a play ready. Tomlin calls timeout right before they snap it. So the Ravens kind of had to show their play because it snapped and you start to run it. And they're like, oh, no. Tomlin called timeout. So basically the Ravens burned what was their number one 2-point play in that situation, right? Like, that's brilliant. That's the small things that win football games that Mike Tomlin is really excellent at.
Yeah, well, and in this situation, if you're Baltimore, you got to figure it out quick. Like, look, there's no doubt Baltimore is going to be a playoff team. It concerns me that every few weeks we're like, well, this was just one of those games where it didn't really get on track. Like, I don't know. I don't know that you can have those games because, to your point, I don't know from the eye test or on paper or if we're playing the video game version, all the things we say. I don't know that I think that the Ravens are actually worse than the Steelers on paper, and it didn't matter. Like, the Steelers know how to win ugly football games, and this year I think that that's sort of the mark of of greatness in the AFC. You know how to win an ugly football game, you're going to be just fine when it comes to the playoff conversation. The Ravens, I didn't feel like they knew how to win an ugly game. They never had an answer for that defensive line, particularly for Pittsburgh, and that bothers me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like that. This Ravens team is flawed and we get so caught up, me and you included, I think, in this. We get so caught up in how fun their offense is. Like, oh my God, Derrick Henry's going to run for 2,000 yards and Lamar's going to win MVP. We don't realize this isn't your normal Ravens defense. The Ravens defense has been great for years and years and years. You lose Mike McDonald, you lose some key pieces, and all of a sudden your defense stinks. It does. They're giving up like 20 more passing yards per game than any other team in the NFL. They're not going to go very far in the playoffs with this continuous. I don't care how good Lamar is. I don't care how good Derrick Henry is. This defense wasn't really the problem today, right? Like, I mean, it's not like a Steelers.
No, the defense played well enough to win. That's the thing that bothers me.
Yes,
the defense played well enough. If I tell you if we rewind it, we're filming last night, and I say, all right, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to score 18 points. Okay, I'm good with that. Like, we'll win that football game. That's got to be the way the Ravens think about it. Like, so that's what's hard about this is that it's I can't pin it on the defense. The offense should have been more productive in this, and they just. I want Todd Monken, and I challenge Todd Monken a lot because I think he's playing chess with the best pieces in the league. I think he has a lot there in front of him. There's some offensive line issues. Right? Yeah, he's got to work out some offensive line stuff, but it just never felt like they were able to consistently give help to stop Watt. And I just, every time I saw him in the backfield just trying to challenge Derrick Henry, I'm sitting there thinking, how is there not a better plan for minimizing the best player on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm best player, maybe best player in the league. Like he's that good. He's so good. I really have to tip my cap to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who me and you, both of us, me probably more than you, kind of buried them in the offseason. Just said, this is the year Tomlin's not going to win. They have a winning season. And then even during the season, you're like, I don't know if this is sustainable. Here they are. Like, again, they're probably one of the 5 best teams in the NFL. They're capable of winning a Super Bowl. If you're one of the 5 best teams in the NFL, you're capable of winning a Super Bowl. So, yeah, hats off to Pittsburgh. This was a heck of an effort by them. And it's just a really, really important win. That's another win that's going to shape the AFC playoff picture from now until the end of the season.
I think this is the record for the longest it's ever taken us to get to Sunday Night Football. We'll get to Sunday Night Football and the rest of the slate after a quick break. All right, Frank, Sunday Night Football, that game was drunk. Let's just be honest. The Chargers go out to a big lead, and then all of a sudden, the second half, the Bengals just chip away at it. They find themselves in a situation where they can win the game winner with the easy field goal, not once, but twice. They miss both field goals. The Chargers get the ball, immediately go down the field, and somehow get the game winning. I am stunned at what I saw out of that football game.
Just a weird game. Like, it ended up in the place we thought it would at halftime with the Bengals losing, but what a wild ride to get there. The Bengals are that team this season that has played the most weird games, like both Ravens games and the Patriots game even back in week 1. And it just, all of these close losses for the Bengals just have added up on them. And now they're 4-7 and we could basically cross them off the list. Like, they would have to win every game from here on out to make the playoffs, I think. And I think we can pretty much know like who all of our playoff teams are. It's not going to be the Bengals. Chargers kind of punched their ticket. Let's talk about the Bengals first, just because probably not going to talk about the Bengals much more after tonight because they're done. It was great for them to come back. Awesome. Like, really, Chris Collinsworth talking about, how no matter what happens in this game, they showed so much heart. I guess if you hadn't stunk in the entire first half, though, you wouldn't have needed this comeback that ultimately fell up short. they were bad in the first half, got completely outplayed, dug themselves this huge, huge hole. And yeah, Joe Burrow got hot for a while and got him back in this game. And for a while, it seemed like they were going to win. But, it's not just the comeback. It's what led you to the comeback. And that's falling behind 27-6. Like, they played bad football before then, as they played bad football most of the year. And it's not just bad luck that they're 4-7. They've put themselves in some of these positions. And they did again tonight. And, hats off to Burrow for staying in it, get his team back in the game. The missed field goals really, really hurt them, obviously.
Yeah,
but at the end, it's just another loss.
I don't want to polish this at all. Like, the Bengals at the end of this year will have been an epic failure, right? Like,
yes.
You chose not to trade T. Higgins, and you bring him back because you think you're in a window where suddenly you can compete with the Chiefs. Now it looks like it would take a miracle for you to make the playoffs, and you've wasted yet another year in the prime of Joe Burrow. Like, this is about as big a fail as you can have. Like, all of the shine has gone to Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator. They can't figure out, what's wrong with this team. They just find unique ways to lose every single week. I don't have a lot of faith in the Bengals right now. So this gets really tricky for me because you're supposed to, when you have Joe Burrow, you're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender every year, not a 4-7 team that's going to need some sort of wild run to try and put themselves back in the playoff conversation.
Yeah, they would have to win out. Like, that's just, and aside from unless the 49ers miss the playoffs, and we'll talk about them in a little bit, this would be probably the most disappointing team to miss the playoffs this year. Maybe the Jets can make that argument, but you're right. They just kind of blowing another year of Joe Burrow's prime to what, go 4-7. I start to wonder if Zach Taylor is safe. Like, if this thing really gets bad for them and they go, I don't know, 5-12, 6-11, whatever it's going to be, and miss the playoffs, are we sure he's safe? Like, I don't know at that point. It's just been a bad season for the Bengals. And now, like you said, they're just kind of irrelevant the rest of the way. On the other hand, like, it just seemed like this was one of those games the Chargers always blow, right? They always do this, even with Jim Harbaugh. And everyone's making the jokes about Charger and all that kind of stuff. And, I was kind of giving Justin Herbert a bit of a hard time on Twitter, but he kind of deserved it too, like, because at one point, I believe he was 6-24 after a good start. And then he was like 10-10. And then he went 6-24 with a bad fumble too in the fourth quarter. And he tried to play his team out of this game. Now, give him credit. When he had to do it, 2 huge passes to Ladd McConkey. The second one was awesome. Looked like it was going to set him up at field goal range. And then J.K. Dobbins like, we don't need no stinking field goal. Let me just finish this myself. Scored a nice game-winning touchdown. But it was a step for Justin Herbert because he's a guy who I've always stepped back and said, why does this guy get treated unlike every other quarterback? We don't judge him on wins and losses. We don't judge him on blowing it in the fourth quarter of games. We just go, ooh, that cool highlight in the second quarter. And that's all we fixate on. And it was looking like the same thing again tonight. But this time he made big time passes in meaningful opportunities and got the win because this loss would have been really, really bad for the Chargers.
I mean, not for nothing. Like, the Chargers are 7-3. Like, it doesn't feel like they're 7. The Chargers are 7-3. If you're 7-3,
they're not dead in the AFC West, right? Like, they get another shot at the Chiefs. Like, it's at least a possibility. Like, I'm not saying I think they're going to take the West from the Chiefs, but they're not dead yet. There's a good football. Harbaugh's doing a great job.
They're clearly a playoff team. They are clearly a playoff team. So, like, not what you want to see. I think we said this last week. Not one you want to see either. If you're one of these division winners, whether the Steelers go on to win the division and draw the Chargers in the first round, you're gonna be like, ooh, that really isn't a game we like on Wild Card Weekend. All right, let's get to some of the other big games, and a huge one for the Packers and the Bears. I mean, this game I'm sitting here trying to figure out, again, coaching loses games. And I did not understand for the life of me, Chicago basically deciding they were just going to kick the field goal. They didn't want to run another player to get in closer. They didn't want to do it. They kick a field goal. They attempt a field goal at the end of the game that gets blocked. And suddenly Green Bay gets a win in a game that I'm stunned, Frank. Like, if you're Chicago, you had the uptick of the new offensive coordinator, all the little things that you usually get. It was a game that felt sloppy by the Packers. It was not their best effort. This was Chicago's chance to get them, and they didn't.
I thought it was Chicago's chance to get them. As a dabbler, I might have had something on the Bears winning this one straight up. And I'll tell you when it changed for me is about 4.5 minutes to go, 4th and 3, the Packers 49, and the Bears come out like they're going to go for it, take a delay game, then punt. And I was like, that was dumb. There was the anti-Sean McDermott, right? I was like, at that point, Caleb is playing really well. They have some confidence. Just go for it. Try to win the game right there. And after that, Jordan Love completes a long pass to Christian Watson, which, by the way, I think the ball did hit the ground. Like, let's get into that. Like, I just thought it was a wrong call. I thought that should have been reversed, but it wasn't. That's fine. But still, Caleb rallies. They're going down the field, and I hate when coaches just pack up the tent and just settle for a long field goal. And after the game, Packers players were like, yeah, we knew that Santos hits kind of a low trajectory ball. And the further he is out, the lower the trajectory is going to be. So we had a chance to block it. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, Matt Eberflus, you need to get fired. Like that, like, what are we doing here? The Packers knew, like, okay, please settle for this field goal because we'll have a chance to block it. Where, again, with about 30-some seconds left, Bears just took the air out of the ball and said 46 yards, we're fine. We're good. We're good kicking this thing. And every single thing that Matt Eberflus has done for about the past month, going back to the Hail Mary game, has just been wrong. He is just, every time he hits on 16 in blackjack, it's a 10. Yeah, every time he doubles down on an 11, a 2 comes up. Like, every single move he makes is wrong. And I think at some point, look, you fired your offensive coordinator, and that did have a good effect. I thought Caleb played one of his better games of the season. Much better. So that had a desired effect. And now the Bears have to, at some point, look in the mirror and say, yeah, we've never fired a coach during the season, but yeah, this ain't working. This ain't our guy. And I think Matt Eberflus is dead man walking from now on. I think Bears fans have checked out on him. I think maybe even his team has checked out on him, just based on the horrible decisions that he's made. And just like, and it's the small things. Like we just talked about Tomlin. This is the anti-Tomlin, where the Hail Mary game, the Commanders get about 8 to 10 yards right before that final throw. And Dan Quinn comes out and says, we couldn't have even thrown a Hail Mary without those yards. What was Matt Eberflus saying? That didn't matter. What? Him taking the air out of the ball and saying, we're just going to kick a 46-yard field goal. Packers are on the other side going, yeah, they gave us a chance to block the field goal. Like, what are we doing here? It's getting little things wrong, managing the game, that it just leads to losses. The margin of error in the NFL is very, very slim. And the Bears don't have the right coach to manage that margin of error. Like they just, something needs to change. It has to change. And you've been calling for this for weeks.
To your blackjack point, it's not even that the cards aren't going his way. He's making the wrong decision.
You're right. Yeah,
like somebody needs to hand him one of those little cheat cards that tells you what to do in each situation, because it doesn't feel like he knows what the hell he's doing when it comes to actually managing game situations. And that's just, look, I've been square on Eberflus needs to be gone for weeks. I've been square on it for months. I said it in the offseason. Like, I think this was the wrong decision to make. And the one encouraging thing is that Caleb did look better. And, you know, if you're Green Bay, you got to be encouraged. You had a game where, like, Jordan Love just didn't do much, didn't really have to do much. They had a hard time sustaining drives. They didn't really get much going. They didn't have a lot of rhythm in their offense either. And they still got to win. So if you're Green Bay,
look at this Packers team, like, I don't know how do you look at them, because I'm like, yeah, the record's good, and I know they got talent, but have you seen Green Bay have that definitive wow? Like, that,
no,
wow,
I don't
the Green
think
Bay Packers are great. Like, I don't know where I am with the Packers. I think they're good, but definitely not great. We haven't seen them, I don't think, hit their best game this season. I don't think we've seen them play a great game this season.
They remind me of a lot of teams in the league that I think they can get you a win, but what's their defining thing that you can't stop? How do the Green Bay Packers dominate you to get a win? If we get into a playoff game and it's, I'm going to do my best versus your best, what is the best from Green Bay that everybody cowers in fear from and that they really hang their hat on as the calling card for what will make us a championship caliber football team? They can win football games. I just don't think that they have that defining thing that everybody sits back and says, oh man, I don't want to have to take on Green Bay because they can do this to me. They just find weird ways to win games. I give them credit. They're 7-3, but I don't feel like I'm in love with any of it. Do you?
Yeah, I don't look at them as a Super Bowl contender at 7-3.
No,
they just haven't played at that level yet. They could get there. We know that they have that upside, like we saw it late last season, but I don't think they've gotten there yet.
Now they sit at 7-3, which is obviously very good. The Minnesota Vikings sit ahead of them at 8-2. The Vikings thrash the Titans. The game didn't really feel as close to me as the final score. Will Levis did have the longest offensive touchdown pass of the year.
He actually looked okay, Fitz. Yeah, he looked okay.
He did.
I ain't gonna lie. It's
I
like
don't
2
think
straight
Levis
weeks
was
where he's
terrible.
looking all right. Yeah. Now that gives the Titans some hope. Like, maybe this guy's turned the corner. Maybe a little bit. Like, hey, he's got, what else are they going to do for the rest of the season? They're a bad football team. You might as well get a look at your second-year quarterback the rest of the way. Not like they're benching him.
Yeah, no, 100%. But Minnesota, they come out with the 23-13 win, and Sam Darnold in this game was pretty good. I will have to say, because I've been tough on Sam Darnold too. He actually played pretty well in this game. So against the Titans defense, it's had some good moments this year. So I think if you're Minnesota fans, maybe do you breathe a little sigh of relief thinking maybe the Yips have left Sam Darnold?
You hope. I mean, it is against the Titans, so who knows? But that's just, it's so easy. There's not that many guys in the NFL where if you give me one stat at the end of the game, I can tell you if the Vikings won or not. And it's Sam Darnold's turnovers. Like, how many times did he turn it over? Turned it over once today, the fumble. That's not ideal, but manageable against a really, really bad Titans team. So if Sam Darnold plays like this, no interceptions, Vikings are going to win most of their games. And if he turns it over 3 times or not, and it's 3 turnover games for Sam Darnold aren't really out of the norm. That's been his problem his entire career. So I thought this was a step back in the right direction for Sam Darnold. You don't want to let that thing get to we probably would have let off with oh my God, Sam Darnold turned it over 4 times and Tennessee Titans beat them. Did they need to consider a quarterback change or whatever we're going to say about Sam Darnold? It's better to get on the right track and say, hey, we now, we can feel better about Sam Darnold going forward, that this isn't some prolonged slump that's just going to ruin our season.
Another game, obviously, that I watched for personal reasons. The Dolphins destroyed the Raiders in a game that, much like most of the season, was close until the fourth quarter, 34-19. I think the only 2 takeaways here, Brock Bowers is awesome. Just a superstar. Awesome. There's no 2 ways about it. Brock Bowers, you can't stop him. He's open all the time.
13 catches. That's ridiculous for a rookie tight end. Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, he is their offense at this point. But also, speaking of offense, I thought Miami, man, they're starting to get that rhythm. And I keep saying this, especially when you see Tyreek, they are willing right now to take whatever's in front of them. And it was really incredible for anyone that didn't watch the game. The first 2 drives for the Dolphins were both drives of over 8 minutes, right? And then they had another drive at the beginning of the second half that was just under 8 minutes. They sustained drives. And what they're doing right now, really patiently, is they're basically saying, if you're going to back everybody off to make sure that nobody gets open deep, Tua is playing with enough patience to take what's underneath. This Dolphins defense, I think, is starting to get really scary.
Yeah, they're playing well. I just wonder if they dug themselves too big of a hole. The one thing I came out of this game thinking, and I've thought about it a few times this year, where is this kind of fire that we saw from the Raiders late last season when Pierce was the interim? They played hard. They competed hard. They really played well for him. I don't see any of that fire this year. I really don't. Maybe I'm discounting things and just kind of equating effort with losses, and you're not a very good football team, and I get all that, but it just looks different. It looks like this Raiders team is just that kind of extra effort they had last season when they were playing really hard and well for Pierce to get him that job. It's kind of no, not really. We're trying to check out on the season already. I do wonder if Pierce is going to be back next year. They don't have a lot.
I wonder if anybody in that building is going to be. Right. Again, when you are bad enough, and Tom Telesco became the new GM, find me the remarkable talent on this roster too.
Yeah. What positive do you have? You're going to go in the offseason saying what? Okay, we got a great rookie tight end. That's awesome. I mean, very, very, very few teams in NFL history have won big with their tight end being their best player. It's just not a thing, really. But great. It's an awesome draft pick. I love Brock Bowers coming out of college. Who wouldn't? Multiple Mackey Award winner. But and then you say that the defense was supposed to be good. Well, it's not really. The defensive line was supposed to be good. Hasn't been because Wilkins got hurt. It's a mess right now. And yeah, I think if the Raiders don't show some signs of life these last 7 games, I think there's going to be wholesale changes. It almost has to be at this point.
I mean, the team's decimated by injuries. I get that. But I also will say I would be stunned if the Raiders don't end up with either the first or second pick in the draft. And I don't think they're going to win another game this year. And when they have the first or second pick in the draft, they will have, depending on what Jacksonville does, my thought, they're going to have a real shot at the top quarterback in the draft. The best thing they can do right now is the same thing I just said the Jags should do. The Raiders should literally fire everybody in the building, and they should start over from scratch, because this is your opportunity to go into this draft with a very high draft pick and pick what the future is going to look like. And that means organizationally top down, whether it's Mark Davis or Tom Brady, you got to come in, you got to figure out who's going to be our president of team operations. That person then has to hire a GM who hires a coach. Or if you're hiring Ben Johnson for some reason, if you're actually able to convince a great coordinator to want to come in there, make sure that is all being built from one vision from the top all the way down. That is the only way to build a successful team. I don't think keeping one guy and getting rid of the next, it's fair to say Telesco hasn't enough time. I don't care. At this point, everybody should get fired. And that's just the modern NFL. Because you know what? you're right. They're not fighting. Kind of like the Patriots are fighting, right? The Patriots lost 28-22 to the Rams today. But what did the Patriots do? And they got Drake May. I understand that gives them something to fight for. Drake doesn't have anything around him. That talent, there's not a lot of talent on that roster. And the Patriots still went out and put up a fight. The Patriots went out and played their asses off, and the Rams just beat them because the Rams are better. That's fine. But, that there's a difference there, Frank.
I do think the Patriots are playing hard most weeks and playing as well as they can. They're just not good. And that's fine. We all knew that. Drake May, they got something there. I mean, he's a good player. He really is. I thought that he was in trouble going into this situation. I think that's a lot. That was kind of the consensus. That's why he didn't start the season. But he's handled himself really well. He's kept them in games. They didn't need an off season to build up the talent. And the other side of this, the Rams, it was nice to see Stafford play well. He's been up and down this season. He did play well. Long touchdown to Cooper Kupp was awesome. I think that loss to Miami is going to end up being what keeps the Rams out of the playoffs if they even continue this. But yeah, they got to win. They needed to win. The Patriots it's just a long season for them, and it's going to take a while.
All right. Bo Nix is amazing. The Jets aren't. We'll talk about the rest of the games after we take a quick break. All right, Frank, anything big on your mind with New Orleans beating Cleveland 35-14 in a game that you only watched if you were a New Orleans or Cleveland fan?
Nope.
Okay.
But Taysom Hill played really well. Taysom Hill is one of those players who you can understand why a coaching staff loves him because he plays hard, he's versatile, he makes plays. He was really awesome in this game. If you happen to play him on your fantasy team, you probably won your week. And how does that happen? You don't say that often about Taysom Hill. No, that was kind of the highlight for me in this game. The rest is just the Browns are bad. Jameis isn't, he's probably not proving himself to be the answer. The only thing is, I will say this. I wonder about Darren Rizzi, their interim head coach, the Saints interim head coach, 2-0 now, been a different energy in the building. Been a different energy from him from the sidelines. We saw this with Antonio Pierce last year, right? All of a sudden, the wins started coming. There's more juice on the sideline. There's more juice on the field. And Pierce ends up getting a full-time job. Will Rizzi do that? I don't know. They should be focused on Aaron Glenn, that seems like a great match. But we've seen it happen. We saw it happen last year. So I think one interesting thing about either one of these teams going forward is Darren Rizzi really have a shot at the permanent head coaching job? If they win enough games down the stretch, he's going to be getting a legit interview by the Saints and a legit shot to keep that job. So I think that's the one thing I'd be interested in with either of these teams going forward.
Yeah, and I think we also have a pretty good indication of what we already knew, but now we have to admit that, and look, this wasn't all on Jameis Winston. He wasn't terrible in this game, but I don't know. I think the concept was Jameis Winston would be a savior and everything could go better. That's not the case. All right. No. So now that we've gotten through that game, abject disaster in New York. The sky is falling. Anthony Richardson comes back 20-30 for 272 yards and a touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns. Did miss a wide open 2-point conversion that really I thought was going to come back to haunt. But the Colts, who are still clinging to some sort of playoff life in the dreadful AFC basement, the Colts get a big win over the Jets. And now maybe we can finally just I feel like the Jets are Michael Myers at this point as a horror movie fanatic. Every time you think they're dead, somebody tells me that it's not actually the case and they find some weird way to stay alive. The Jets are dead now. All right. That we are done. This thing is over. The Jets are over. Aaron Rodgers looked washed for half this game, played better in the second half, but I don't know. I think losing to this Colts team, that's just a gross loss.
I'm not even going to talk about the Jets. They're a bad football team, and we don't talk about bad football teams on Sunday night. We avoid it as much as we can. The Jets get too much attention as it is. They're just a bad football team, and I really don't care about them anymore. They're inconsequential the rest of the season, except for see how cooked Aaron Rodgers can get by the end of the season and whether he comes back. So the Colts were the interesting part of this game because, look, when they bench Anthony, people are going to look back and say, oh, they were so dumb to bench Anthony Richardson. Flacco lost him 2 games. He sucked. That was terrible. I don't care. The only thing, and we talk about this a lot, only thing that matters for the Colts this season is not getting in as a 7th seed and losing in the first round of the playoffs. It's where you are with Anthony Richardson at the end of the year. And however they got to the point where Anthony Richardson played like he did today, it was worth it, okay? If you're like, well, Anthony Richardson got a little bit of a wake-up call 2 weeks ago and maybe got knocked off his high horse a little bit. I don't know. I've really not heard that much bad about his work habits or anything like that, but sometimes it humbles you. The NFL game humbles you. And instead of just letting him go out there, keep making mistake after mistake after mistake, he sat for a couple of weeks, and maybe that was enough time to reset him a little bit. He looked good in this game. Did he miss passes? Yes, he's always going to miss passes. But this version of Anthony Richardson, you can win big with that. If you complete 2/3 of your passes and you're running the ball well, and you're going to miss some. That's just the kind of quarterback you are. You're different than everybody else. But if he could play at this level, I think the Colts are just fine, and they'll be thrilled by the end of the season if this little 2-week reset ended up getting the Anthony Richardson we saw today for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I will say the Broncos don't need a reset. I do. I was really wrong about the Denver Broncos, and Bo Nix today, 28 of 33 for 307 yards, tied a Broncos rookie record with 4 touchdowns. The Broncos absolutely demolished the Falcons. And I want to be fair, Frank. You've been really right about saying, hey, we need to just slow the roll a little bit on Atlanta. And I kept watching that today, so you can say, my God, we need to pump the brakes beyond what I thought. But this is a Denver team that their defense really good. Their defense has played really well. And while their defense has played well, their offense has gotten better every single week. Now their offense is playing almost as well as that defense is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it gave Bo Nix the chance to come along. He has an understanding of this offense and what Sean Payton wants him to do. Man, Denver's scary to me right now. I did not think they'd be this good this fast. I thought it would take a couple of years. Instead, it's only taken weeks. Kudos to the Broncos.
A different conversation with them if they beat the Chiefs last week, right? We'd even be giving them more praise. We probably wouldn't have waited till this part of the show to start talking about them. But they did have a setback last week. But it's good that they didn't let that turn into 2 losses in a row. To bounce back like this. There was one pass Knicks had, and I wish I could tell you who it was to, but it was over the middle of the field, and he hit like between the 2 levels of the defense absolutely perfectly. It was like a Mahomes level throw, like one of those like where you're like if Joe Burrow threw that, you'd be like, whoa, that was a nice throw by Joe. I was like, wow, that was really impressive for Bo Nix right there to just thread the needle. He just continues to look better and better. And it was texting with Charles Robinson, our colleague, about this class, and you start to say, Caleb looked good today, right? Like he bounced back. I mean, nobody's giving up on Caleb Woods, or he shouldn't anyway. Jaden Daniels is awesome. He's going to be the rookie of the year still. Let's not get the next thing going. Like Jaden Daniels, so rookie of the year. And then you have Drake May looks really good in a bad situation. And Bo Nix is playing out of his mind. We haven't got even a complete grade yet on Penix or JJ McCarthy, but this is starting to look like a historic class where we're going to get multiple star quarterbacks out of this class. And Bo Nix is one of them. And there's a ton of skepticism about Bo Nix. I was probably a little bit skeptical. I thought he'd be fine with Sean Payton, but I've always kind of said, he's going to be kind of a low ceiling quarterback. Maybe he's not a low ceiling quarterback. Yeah. Maybe he does have a higher ceiling than I thought, because the guy you saw play today was really good. And one thing about the Falcons, the one thing I keep saying about the Falcons is, well, they're going to be good enough to win a bad division and go lose in the wild card round. I'm like, why are they going to win the division? They stink. They're not a good football team. Like the Buccaneers can track them down. I think the Buccaneers are a better football team than the Falcons. The Buccaneers are taking on some losses where you're like, I don't know if they can catch the Falcons, but why not? Because this Atlanta team is not good. They're just not good. They're going to be one of those teams, probably, if they do end up winning the NFC South. They're going to be in that first Sunday game against the Green Bay Packers, and they're going to lose like 31-13 to Jordan Love and the Packers. Like that's just their fate right now. I can call it right now.
And the Falcons can't do anything when they're one-dimensional, and the Broncos' defense is so good, especially against the run, it makes you one-dimensional. They couldn't run the football. They're screwed. Like, that's just such a theme right now across every single Sunday. Like, if you cannot establish some sort of consistent running game, you are going to lose. And by the way, the Broncos would be the 7 seed in the playoffs right now. Like that,
it's almost closing time in the AFC playoff picture. Like there really aren't many teams in this wild card race anymore. We're kind of seeing like before Thanksgiving.
No, the Colts would be the 8 seed.
Yeah,
remarkably, with a losing record.
I mean, do you have faith in the Colts closing the gap here? I think probably we could figure out our 7 playoff teams out of the AFC right now.
God, that is just that's wild to be there. And again, like this speaks to one of the things that the AFC West is just going to have to deal with. Like, if you are in the AFC West, you have a quarterback-coach combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You have a quarterback-coach combination of Sean Payton and Bo Nix, who is just absolutely lights out right now. And you have a quarterback-coach combination of Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. Like, when you just start to look across the board at that, like, you cannot win in that division and in that conference long term. I don't think you can consistently win unless you have a coach that can win you games and a quarterback that can win games.
I got 4 words for you, Fitz. Got 4 words for you.
Oh my God.
Dion and Shedeur Sanders. There you go. That's
go back to inside coverage.
Go back to
inside coverage. See, Rob laid that out for everybody. But yeah, it is alarming right now how difficult it is to win in that division. And
that's all going to get harder.
Frankly, in that conference. So speaking of weird divisions, the NFC West. Okay. You know me. I've been in big on the Cardinals. All right. The Cardinals, I don't think are getting enough street cred. But the Seahawks beat the 49ers 20-17 today, which means the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers are all 5-5. The Cardinals are 6-4. That division, we don't sit there and say it stinks. I just can't figure out like what is the right time to give up on the 49ers.
I know. And I'm falling into this trap where I'm like, they're still the 49ers. They're still going to win that division. And you look up and it's like, it's mid-November and they're 500. Like, this was a bad loss for them. A really bad loss. Really, really bad loss. They couldn't put the game away. And also Geno Smith is driving them downfield. I thought when, they failed on a 4th and 1 late-ish in the fourth quarter, I was like, okay, that's it. Now the 49ers can put the game away, et cetera, et cetera. They couldn't do it. And they come back and Geno just has a great drive. Obviously, really nice touchdown for the win. And it's good for the Seahawks, but I think it's more about the 49ers, where this team we all kind of thought would be a Super Bowl contender is nowhere near it right now. Maybe they can get there. I still think they have that ceiling somewhere, but at some point, if you don't show it, what does it matter? And everybody talks about the injuries with the 49ers, and I get that. I do. Losing a Brandon Ayuk stinks, and they didn't have George Kittle today. But you know what? Every NFL team has injuries like that. Like, every NFL team has lost some key player.
Yes, they have Christian McCaffrey. They still have Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings is awesome. Like, Juwan Jennings has played as well as you would expect Brandon Ayuk to play, right? Like, if you just put number 11 jersey on Juwan Jennings, you'd say, yeah, there's Brandon Ayuk. Like, it's not like they're struggling at that spot. And this is as healthy as any NFL team is going to be at mid-November. You're going to lose, guys. You have to overcome it. The San Francisco 49ers have not been able to overcome that. They have not been able to win close games. You've pointed this out really early in the season of like, maybe it's just it's in your DNA or you're not. Do you win close games or you don't? This 49ers team cannot close out games. They cannot win close games. I think that's part of what they are. And at some point, yes, we have to let go of what we thought the 49ers would be and judge them on what they actually are. And what they actually are is a very flawed 500 team that's looking like it's having a bad Super Bowl hangover.
And the crazy thing is, I would have thought that would be Brock Purdy's fault. But I watched today's game.
It's not I don't look at Purdy as a problem.
No,
I really don't.
No,
He's
like
fine.
he did a really nice job in the pocket today, moving around. I was watching that game thinking, man, I don't give him credit enough for how athletic he is. Like, he does a nice job of stepping up, avoiding some pressure, finding a way to get rid of the football. And frankly, on the other side of the ball, I don't trust Geno Smith at all. Like, Geno just at times is bewilderingly bad, but he found a way to win. Yeah. And so, like, this is the weirdest part about it. Like, it's just none of this game with the Seahawks beating the 49ers actually made sense to me. But I do feel like I sit here and I say, okay, I keep finding reasons to fault Seattle for their inconsistency, and I keep finding reasons to try and credit the 49ers, and I'm done with it. Like, I'm done with the 49ers. Look, it's not that they're a bad football team. It's just they don't have the magic pixie dust this year. And without the magic pixie dust, I don't believe in them. All right, Houston takes on Dallas. Dallas is 7-point underdog.
Like, we had such a good show, Fitz, and then you got to remind me that I got to watch the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow. Like, you got now, and like, oh, great, my Monday night's ruined because I got to watch Cooper Rush throw for 45 yards on 23 attempts. Great.
All of our fantasy teams are screwed here. They're gonna get thumped by Houston, right?
I assume so. Like, they stink. Like, as a dabbler, I always like taking teams their first game with a new quarterback, right? You get that, we're going to rally around this guy, blah, blah. They look terrible the first game with Cooper Rush. Well, it's not going to get better in the second game. Like, this just looks like a dead man walking team to me. Like, I think Cowboys, as a dabbler, I will not be putting any of my hard-earned money on the Dallas Cowboys the rest of the season because that just seems dumb to me. Now, I don't know how good the Texans are. Maybe we've overrated them too, but I sure as heck aren't picking the Cowboys in this game. Like, no chance.
The dead man walking part of this is important because I think the Cowboys are one of many teams right now that look like they're already on the golf course. And we've talked on this show for a while about the fact that there are a handful, 8 to 10 teams that are just dreadful, abysmal, awful this year. and they have stopped fighting many of them. And that's going to be a
Yeah.
theme over the last month of the season.
And usually
Bad
that
teams
doesn't
are just
happen.
quitting.
But I think there's a perfect storm with Dallas, especially where coach is a lame duck. You know he's not going to get that contract extended. At least we don't think so. It's not really playing for the coach. And unlike teams like that are fighting, the Patriots, for an example, the Patriots had no expectations coming into this season. They're just battling hard. When you go from the Cowboys thinking we're Super Bowl contenders to we're just playing out the string and hoping to beat Houston Texans on a Monday night to save some pride, like that ain't gonna work usually in the NFL. Like your dreams were crushed by Halloween. So yeah, it's kind of this perfect storm where I don't think there's some dead cat bounce coming with the Cowboys. Like it's just, if it was going to happen, it would have happened last week when Cooper Rush took over, and we saw how they kind of laid down last week. So I don't think it's going to get any better.
You're right. We're going to continue to get better every single week. Hang out with us on Wednesdays and Fridays, obviously. Be sure, we couldn't do this without Stone. Got to give Stone all of the love for doing God's work. And in the meantime, you've listened this far. Might as well go out, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends and family, tell enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us. We genuinely appreciate that we get to spend Sunday night, two buddies talking about football. We get to spend it with you guys because you take the time to listen to it. So it means the world to us. I hope your team's fared better than my team did, because this season's an abject disaster. It sucks, but this show is always a blast. Frank, it's been a good one. We should do this again in a few days.
Well, yeah, like let's say 7 days. Why don't we get together and talk about every single game on the slate once again?